forcibly used a firearm in the course of that murder, which is a violation of Penal Code Section 12022.5. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Further alleged in counts 2 through 13 that you did commit multiple murders within the meaning of Penal Code Section 190.2, paren A, paren 3, and of the Penal Code Section 190.2, paren C, paren 5. Do you admit the multiple murder special circumstance? Do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Counsel.
Thank you. Your Honor, factual basis for count 14, Jane Doe 1, September the 4th, 1976. On the evening of September the 4th, 1976, Jane Doe number 1 went to her parents' residence located on Crestview Drive in the city of Carmichael, County of Sacramento. The victim went to her parents' residence to do some laundry. At approximately 11:15 p.m., she loaded the clean clothes into her car that was parked on the street in front of the residence. After placing the laundry inside the car, she turned around and was suddenly confronted by Joseph DeAngelo, who told her, "Don't scream." DeAngelo immediately punched her in the face and broke her nose. After the victim fell to the ground, the defendant dragged her to the side yard of the residence, which was not within view of the street. At this point, DeAngelo forced her face down onto the ground and tied her hands behind her back with some shoelaces that he brought with him. At knife point, DeAngelo led her into the residence while threatening to slit her throat. He said, "All I want is your car so I can get to Bakersfield." Joseph DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried the victim away with the intent to commit robbery within the meaning of Penal Code Section 209 and used a knife to do so. DeAngelo's decision to move the victim away from the driveway, down the side yard, and ultimately into the house was more than merely incidental, as it substantially increased the risk of harm to her above and beyond the crime of robbery itself. This movement fundamentally changed her environment and greatly minimized the chances of someone seeing the crime or hearing the victim's cries. It increased the possibility of further crimes being committed against her. Once inside the house, DeAngelo held a knife to her throat and placed his penis in her hands, which were still bound behind her back, and forced her to masturbate him. The victim said his penis felt greasy, like he had rubbed lotion on it. DeAngelo then raped and sodomized the victim as she screamed in pain. After forcing the victim to orally copulate him at knife point, DeAngelo continued to sexually assault her multiple times before tying her legs to an electrical piano. While sexually assaulting the victim, he taunted and threatened her by repeatedly saying things like, "You better do it right or I'll kill you. Have you ever done this before? Do you like to quote-unquote fuck? With who?" After the sexual assaults, the defendant ransacked the house and drank beer from the refrigerator. DeAngelo drove away from the scene in the victim's car and stole her purse.
Thank you, counsel. Defense counsel wishes to be heard as to a factual basis.
No, Your Honor.
Regarding count 14 in the charge of kidnapping to commit robbery of Jane Doe 1, having occurred September 4th, 1976, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 209. To that charge, sir, how do you plead?
Guilty.
It's also an allegation that you personally used a knife in the course of that robbery in violation of Penal Code Section 12022 of the Penal Code. Do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe 1, having occurred on September 4th, 1976 in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that, sir?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe 1, having occurred on September 4th, 1976 in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 211, do you admit or deny that, sir?
I admit.
Counsel.
In regards to counts 15, Jane Doe number 2, John Doe 1, on April the 2nd, 1977. Jane Doe number 2 lived at a home with her children in a single-story house on Richdale Way in the city of Orangeville, County of Sacramento. Occasionally, her boyfriend, John Doe number 1, stayed overnight. Around 3:15 a.m. on April the 2nd, 1977, the victim woke up and saw a man at the foot of her bed holding a very bright flashlight aimed at her and her boyfriend. That man was Joseph DeAngelo, who stated, "You see this gun? Stop. Don't move. Lay on your stomachs. I have a .45 with 14 shots, 2 clips. I want your money." DeAngelo threw shoelaces on the bed and told the victim to tie up her boyfriend's wrists behind his back. DeAngelo said, "Don't make any sudden moves or I'll kill you like I did some people in Bakersfield." Pinning the victim's arms behind her back, the defendant led her out of the bedroom. A few minutes later, DeAngelo returned to the boyfriend and placed a cup and a saucer on his back. Joseph DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried away Jane Doe number 2 with the intent to commit robbery within the meaning of Penal Code Section 209 and used a gun to do so. He forced the victim into the family room. His decision to move her away from the male partner was more than merely incidental to the crime of robbery itself and substantially increased the harm to her. It was done to both physically and psychologically cripple her will. This movement fundamentally changed her environment and greatly minimized the chances of her escape by removing the threat of someone else who might have stopped, and it exposed her to greater injury. DeAngelo knelt beside her and put his penis in her bound hands, forcing her to masturbate him. Joseph DeAngelo then turned her over, removed her underwear, and said, "You have to tell me the truth, and if you don't, I'll find out and kill you both. Did you fuck tonight?" After orally copulating her, Joseph DeAngelo placed a pair of high heels on the victim's feet and vaginally raped her. After the first sexual assault, she could hear him eating something in the kitchen. About 20 minutes later, DeAngelo returned and vaginally raped her again. He tried multiple positions and continued to rape her until he finally. After several hours, the boyfriend was able to get off the bed, wake up the victim's son, who was sleeping in another room, and run to a neighbor's house for help. Joseph DeAngelo spent hours in their home, eating their food, terrorizing them, and then stole money from their residence.
Counsel, you wish to be heard as the factual basis on count 15?
No, Your Honor.
Regarding count 15 and the charge of kidnapping with intent to commit robbery, Jane Doe number 2, having occurred on April 2nd, 1977, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 209. How do you plead to this, sir?
Guilty.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe number 2, having occurred on April 2nd, 1977, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261. You admit or deny that, sir?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe 2 and John Doe 1, having occurred April 2nd, 1977, in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 211. Do you admit or deny that, sir?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe 2 and John Doe 1, having occurred April 2nd, 1977, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe 2 and John Doe 1, having occurred April 2nd, 1977, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 422. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Counsel?
In regards to count 16, April 15, 1977, Jane Doe number 3 stayed over at her fiancé's, John Doe number 2's residence, located on Sherlin Way in the city of Carmichael, County of Sacramento. The home was located next door to a house with a for sale sign on it. On April the 15th, 1977, at approximately 2 a.m., both victims were awakened by a bright light in their faces. Joseph DeAngelo stood at the foot of their bed and said, "Don't turn around. I have a .45 and I will shoot you if you move." DeAngelo handed Jane Doe number 3 some shoelaces to tie up her fiancé, and then he tied her up as well. After DeAngelo ransacked the house, he ordered the victim to help him find her purse. He forced her down the hallway and threatened, "If I hear one noise out of you, I'll blow his head off." felt the cold blade of a knife against her neck. Joseph DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried away Jane Doe with the intent to commit robbery within the meaning of Penal Code Section 209, using both a knife and a gun to do so. His decision to move her away from her fiancé was more than merely incidental, as it substantially increased the risk of harm to her above and beyond the crime of robbery itself. This movement fundamentally changed her environment and greatly minimized the chances of escape by removing the threat of someone who might have stopped his felonious crimes, and it increased the possibility of further crimes being inflicted upon her. DeAngelo took the victim to the living room, where there was a robe covering a lamp. In several of the other cases, DeAngelo placed a towel over a lamp or television to create soft lighting. After DeAngelo's arrest in April of 2018, detectives found a towel draped over his computer monitor, creating the same soft lighting. DeAngelo left the victim in the living room and returned to the bedroom, where he placed dishes on top of John Doe number 2's back and warned, "If I hear these dishes fall, I'll cut her throat." Back in the living room, Jane Doe number 3 heard a zipper unzip, followed by swishing noises. DeAngelo placed his penis in her hands, which were tied behind her back, and made her masturbate him. He then rolled her over and committed vaginal rape. After approximately a minute, the victim heard her fiancé knock something over. DeAngelo got up and went to the bedroom. When he came back, DeAngelo forced the victim to orally copulate him before raping her several more times and forcing his penis into her rectum. When she cried out in pain, he told her to shut up. Sexually assaulting the victim did not sufficiently satiate his sadistic proclivities, because he also taunted the victim, telling her things like, "You didn't know you would be sucking my dick tonight. Do you know what I'm doing? Where am I doing it?" and demanded that she say, "In my butt." He spent several hours in the house terrorizing the victims, taking their cash and rings. After hearing DeAngelo walk out the back door, the victim crawled to the kitchen and got a knife to cut off her bindings for freeing her fiancé.
Thank you, counsel. Defense counsel wish to be heard as to the factual basis.
No, Your Honor.
Regarding count 16, in the charge of the offense of kidnapping with intent to commit robbery of Jane Doe 3, having occurred April 15th, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 209, how do you plead to that?
Guilty.
There's also an allegation that you personally used a firearm in the course of that robbery, violation of Penal Code Section 12022.5. Do you admit or deny that, sir?
I admit.
There's also an allegation that you personally used a knife in the course of that robbery, in violation of Penal Code Section 12022. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe 3, having occurred on April 15th, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that, sir?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe 3 and John Doe 2, having occurred April 15th, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 211, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe 3 and John Doe 2, having occurred April 15th, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe 3 and John Doe 2, having occurred April 15th, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 422, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Counsel?
Your Honor, in regards to count 17, May the 3rd, 1977, Jane Doe number 4 lived with her husband, John Doe number 3, and their young sons on La Riviera Drive in the city of Sacramento, county of Sacramento. Their two-story house backed up on the levee, up to the levee of the American River. At approximately 3 a.m. on May the 3rd, 1977, both victims were awakened by a bright light in their faces. Joseph DeAngelo stood at the foot of their bed. Pointing the flashlight at his right hand, DeAngelo showed a handgun and threatened, "Don't make a move. All I want is money. I got a .45 caliber. Kill you if you move." The defendant pressed the gun against John Doe number 3's head and told him to roll over onto his stomach. DeAngelo handed Jane Doe number 4 some shoelaces to tie up her husband, and then he tied her up as well. DeAngelo continued to threaten the husband. If you try to grab me, I'll kill you. Then shoot your wife and then everyone in the house. At gunpoint, DeAngelo ordered the victim to help him find her purse. Forcing her upstairs, Joseph DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried Jane Doe number 4 away with the intent to commit robbery within the meaning of Penal Code Section 209. His decision to move her upstairs away from her husband was more than merely incidental, as it substantially increased the risk of harm to her above and beyond the crime of robbery itself. This movement fundamentally changed her environment and greatly minimized the chances of escape by removing the threat of someone who might have been able to stop his conduct and increased the possibility of further crimes being inflicted upon. After forcing Jane Doe number 4 onto the living room floor, DeAngelo returned to the husband. DeAngelo placed a cup and a saucer on his back and threatened, "If I hear this move, I'll kill you and everyone in the house." When DeAngelo returned to the victim, he made her masturbate him with her hands still tied behind her back, saying things like, "Do it like you're doing it to your husband." Joseph DeAngelo then vaginally raped her. When he finished assaulting her, DeAngelo turned the victim onto her stomach and placed 2 glass objects on her back. He then spent time eating in the kitchen before he went back to raping and sodomizing her. DeAngelo only stopped the sexual assaults when he went into the kitchen to eat more food. After each meal, he would return to vaginally rape the victim yet again. After the last sexual assault, DeAngelo placed the gun to her head and said, "You don't want to die, do you?" and called her a bitch. Before leaving, the defendant took a knife from the house. John Doe number 3 waited approximately 20 minutes before he was able to call for help. On January the 20th, 1978, Jane Doe number 4 answered the phone and heard only oohs and ah sounds on the phone. She handed the phone to her husband, who heard DeAngelo say, "I've not struck in a while. You will be my next victim. I'm going to fuck you in the butt. See you soon," and hung up.
Thank you, counsel. Defense counsel wish to be heard as to the factual basis.
No, Your Honor.
Regarding count 17, in the charge of offense of kidnapping with intent to commit robbery of Jane Doe number 4, having occurred on May 3rd, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 209, how do you plead?
Guilty.
There's also an allegation that you personally used a firearm in the course of that robbery, a violation of Penal Code Section 12022.5. Do you admit or deny that allegation?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe 4, having occurred on April 3rd, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that?
I
Excuse me.
admit.
Right, that, May 3rd. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe 4 and John Doe 3, having occurred May 3rd, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 211, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe 4 and John Doe 3, having occurred May 3rd, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny that, sir?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe 4 and John Doe 3, having occurred May 3rd, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 422, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Counsel?
Those are the counts that I'm handling. Those are the counts I'm handling at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Can you please restate your name for the record?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Amy Holliday, Assistant Chief Deputy for Sacramento County on behalf of the people of the state of California.
Thank you.
In regards to count 18, On May 14, 1977, Jane Doe number 5 and her husband, Jane Doe number 4, were asleep in their home on Merlandale Drive in the city of Citrus Heights, county of Sacramento. They were awakened by a male who was wearing a mask, holding a gun and a flashlight. It was Joseph DeAngelo. DeAngelo told them, "You make a sound and I'll kill you. I have a .45 and I'll kill you if you move." DeAngelo put a gun to John Doe number 4's head and forced Jane Doe number 5 to bind her husband's hands and feet with shoelaces. DeAngelo then bound her hands and feet. He told them, "I'm going to take your money and I want some food and then I will leave in my van." They told him to look for money in a wallet. He took the money and then was heard rummaging around in other rooms of the house. He then returned to the bedroom, placed dishes on John Doe number 4's back, and said, "If I hear these move, I'll slit her throat. I'll cut off her ear and I'll bring it back to you." He told Jane Doe number 5 that he could not find her purse and ordered her to get up. He moved her from the bedroom to the living room and forced her to lay on the floor. She could hear him going through her purse and rifling through the kitchen. DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried away Jane Doe number 5 with the intent to commit robbery within the meaning of Penal Code Section 209, using both a gun and a knife to do so. His decision to move her away from her husband was more than incidental, as it substantially increased the risk of harm to her. DeAngelo returned to the living room, placed a towel over the front of the television set, and turned it on, allowing dim light into the room. He then placed a saucer and a plate on her back and told her, "I'm going to take a break and have some food." He eventually returned to the living room and blindfolded her. She heard him unzip his pants, and she began to cry. DeAngelo told her, "Shut up, or I'll slit your throat." DeAngelo then straddled her back and placed his penis into her hands, forcing her to masturbate him. He then removed her underwear and repeatedly vaginally raped her. When he was done, DeAngelo placed the dishes on her back again. He began to remove her wedding ring and band from her finger, and she begged him not to take it. In response, he held a gun to her head and took the rings from her finger before leaving.
Thank you. Defense counsel wish to be heard as the factual basis on count 18.
No, Your Honor.
Regarding count 18 and the charge offense of kidnapping with intent to commit robbery of Jane Doe number 5 having occurred May 14, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 209. How do you plead?
guilty,
There's also an allegation that you personally used a firearm in the course of that robbery, violation of Penal Code Section 12022.5. You admit or deny that?
I admit,
There's also an allegation you personally used a knife in the course of that robbery in violation of Penal Code Section 12022. You admit or deny that?
I admit,
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe 5 having occurred on May 14, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that?
I admit,
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe 5 and John Doe 4 having occurred May 14, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 211, do you admit or deny that?
I admit,
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment to Jane Doe number 5 and John Doe number 4, having occurred on May 14, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny that?
I admit,
Regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe 5 and John Doe 4, having occurred May 14, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 422. You admit or deny that, sir?
I admit,
Counsel?
Your Honor, as to count 19, on May 17, 1977, Jane Doe number 6 and her husband, John Doe number 5, were asleep in their room on Sandbar Circle in the city of Carmichael in the county of Sacramento. They had gone to bed at 11 p.m. and their two young children were already asleep in the home. They were later awakened by a masked male holding a gun and shining a flashlight in their eyes. John Doe number 5 knew immediately that it was the East Area rapist and pretended to be asleep while he figured out what he should do. John Doe number 5 was correct. It was the East Area rapist, Joseph DeAngelo. DeAngelo ordered them to roll over onto their stomachs and told them he was going to take all of their money and jewelry. He threw some shoelaces on John Doe's back and told his wife to bind his hands and feet. DeAngelo then bound her hands and feet and placed a coin bank onto John Doe number 5's back and ordered him not to move. He said, "I'm going to go and eat and get everything I need. If I hear this, I'll kill everything in the house." DeAngelo began rummaging throughout the house. He then returned to the master bedroom and asked Jane Doe number 6 where her purse was. She stated it was on the refrigerator. He grabbed her and said, "You're going with me." He took her to the family room where she saw that an Afghan had been draped over a lamp. DeAngelo retrieved a knife from the kitchen, held the knife to her throat, and said, "If you do everything I ask, I won't hurt you." He demanded more money. She told him where there was some additional money located. DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried away Jane Doe number 6 with the intent to commit robbery within the meaning of Penal Code Section 209, using both a gun and a knife to do so. His decision to move her away from her husband was more than merely incidental, as it substantially increased the risk of harm to her above and beyond the crime of robbery itself. After finding more money, DeAngelo returned to the family room. Jane Doe number 6 heard the sound of a zipper, and DeAngelo said, "Do what I want you to do." He straddled her back and forced his penis into her hands, which was sticky with lotion. DeAngelo forced her to orally copulate him and then vaginally raped her. He then forced her to orally copulate him a second time. During the act of oral copulation, he told her, "If you don't swallow every drop, I'll kill everyone in this house." DeAngelo ejaculated in her mouth, and she swallowed it, fearing that he would kill her and her family. She did not. He raped her again before binding her feet and placing dishes on her back, and told her that he better not hear the dishes or he would kill for the first time. DeAngelo eventually left, taking money with him.
Defense counsel wish to be heard as to count 19. Regarding count 19 and the charge of offense of kidnapping with intent to commit robbery of Jane Doe number 6, having occurred May 17, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 209, how do you plead to that?
Guilty.
There's also an allegation that you personally used a firearm in the course of that robbery, a violation of Penal Code Section 12022.5. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
There's also an allegation that you personally used a knife in the course of that robbery in violation of Penal Code Section 12022. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe number 6, having occurred on May 17, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe 6 and John Doe 5, having occurred May 17, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 211, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe number 6 and John Doe number 5, having occurred on May 17, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe number 6 and John Doe number 5, having occurred May 17, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 422, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Thank you, counsel.
Your Honor, in regards to count 20, On May 28, 1977, John Doe number 6 worked the swing shift and arrived home at 12:30 a.m. His wife and young son were already asleep in their house on Palmer House Drive in Sacramento County. He joined his wife in their bed and went to sleep. Later, both of them woke up and heard a rattling sound at the door, then heard the door slide open. They saw a masked male coming through their door carrying a flashlight and a large caliber weapon. The man, Joseph DeAngelo, told them, "Lay perfectly still, or I will kill all of you. I will kill you, I will kill her, I will kill your little boy." DeAngelo ordered Jane Doe number 7 to bind her husband's hands and feet with cord that he had brought with him. After binding Jane Doe's hands and feet, he removed shoelaces from shoes that were in the closet and retied the bindings. He repeatedly stated that he just wanted food and money and began rummaging through the house. DeAngelo walked down the hall and into other rooms before returning and placing dishes on John Doe number 6's back. He held a knife to his neck and said, "Don't make a move, or I will kill everyone in the house. As I promised before, I'm only going to get food and money, then go to my van and eat it. If I hear a sound, I'll come in and kill everyone." DeAngelo then forced Jane Doe number 7 into the living room at gunpoint, where he already had a towel laid out on the floor. He bound, blindfolded, and gagged her before rummaging through other rooms of the house. DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried away Jane Doe number 7 with the intent to commit robbery in the meaning of Penal Code Section 209 and used a gun and a knife to do so. His decision to move her away from her husband was more than merely incidental, as it substantially increased the risk of harm to her above and beyond the crime of robbery itself. The movement greatly minimized the chances of escape by removing the threat of someone who might be able to stop his crimes and increased the possibility of further crimes being inflicted upon her. DeAngelo eventually returned to the living room, and Jane Doe number 7 heard the sound of a zipper. He masturbated before vaginally raping her the first time. DeAngelo forced her to change positions before raping her a second time and then sodomizing her, placing his penis in her anus. After he was finished, DeAngelo could be heard rifling through the other rooms. Eventually, they no longer heard him in the house. John Doe number 6 waited, rolled over, knocked the dishes off his back. He was able to get the telephone receiver off and dial the phone with his hands still bound behind his back.
Thank you. Counsel wish to be heard regarding count 20.
No, Your Honor.
Regarding count 20 and the charge of offense of kidnapping with intent to commit robbery of Jane Doe number 7, which occurred May 28, 1977 in the county of Sacramento, in violation of Penal Code Section 209, how do you plead?
Guilty.
There's also an allegation that you personally used a firearm in the course of that robbery, a violation of Penal Code Section 12022.5. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Also an allegation that you personally used a knife in the course of that robbery in violation of Penal Code Section 12022. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe number 7, having occurred on May 28, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe 7 and John Doe number 6, having occurred May 28, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 211. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe number 7 and John Doe number 6, having occurred on May 28, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
And regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe number 7 and John Doe number 6, having occurred May 28, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 422, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. In regards to count 21, on October 1st, 1977, Jane Doe number 8 and her boyfriend, John Doe number 7, were asleep in their bedroom.
So you'll have your chance to speak at the victim impact, and you can state your name at that time, sir.
They lived in a duplex on Tuolumne Drive in the county of Sacramento. They were awakened by a masked male suspect who was holding a gun and a flashlight. The man was Joseph DeAngelo. DeAngelo said, "Shut up. Don't make a move or I'll kill you. I want your dope. I know you have some, and I'll look for it and I'll find it." He spoke in a harsh whisper through clenched teeth. DeAngelo told Jane Doe number 8 to tie her boyfriend's hands together with shoelaces. He then tied her hands behind her back and tied both of their feet, also with shoelaces. DeAngelo left the bedroom and could be heard going through the house, opening drawers, closing the drapes, and opening the sliding glass door. DeAngelo returned to the bedroom and forced Jane Doe number 8 to get up and go into the living room. She saw that he was pointing a gun at her and did as she was told. When they got to the living room, he told her to lay face down on the carpet. She noticed that the living room lamp was on and her boyfriend's robe had been draped over it. She heard a ripping sound, and then DeAngelo placed a towel around her eyes. He held a gun to her head, saying, "Don't move, don't even breathe, or I will blow your brains out." Joseph DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried away Jane Doe number 8 with the intent to commit robbery within the meaning of Penal Code Section 209, using both a gun and a knife to do so. His decision to move her away from her boyfriend was more than merely incidental, as it substantially increased the risk of harm to her above and beyond the crime of robbery itself. John Doe number 7 called out from the bedroom asking if she was okay. DeAngelo told her to say yes, and she did. DeAngelo went into the bedroom and placed dishes and a salt shaker on John Doe number 7's back and told him not to move. He would kill her boyfriend. DeAngelo returned to the living room and straddled Jane Doe number 8's back, putting his penis in her hands and forcing her to masturbate him. He then rolled her over and vaginally raped her and forced her to change positions, raping her again while holding a knife to her neck. When he was done, he retied her feet and eventually left. DeAngelo took her wallet, money, and driver's license.
Counsel, you wish to be heard as to count 21?
No, Your Honor.
Regarding count 21 and the charge of offensive kidnapping with intent to commit robbery, Jane Doe number 8, having occurred on October 1st, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 209. How do you plead, sir?
guilty,
There's also an allegation that you personally used a firearm in the course of that robbery, a violation of Penal Code Section 12022.5. Do you admit or deny?
I admit,
There's also an allegation that you personally used a knife in the course of that robbery, in violation of Penal Code Section 12022. Do you admit or deny that, sir?
I admit,
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe number 8, having occurred on October 1st, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261. Do you admit or deny?
I admit,
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe number 8 and John Doe number 7, having occurred October 1st, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 211. Do you admit or deny?
I admit,
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe number 8 and John Doe number 7, having occurred on October 1st, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236. Do you admit or deny?
I admit,
And regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe number 8 and John Doe number 7, having occurred October 1st, 1977, in the county of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 422. Do you admit or deny?
I admit,
Counsel.
Your Honor, as to count 22, on October 21st, 1977, Jane Doe number 9 and her husband, John Doe number 8, were asleep in their room on Gold Run Avenue in Sacramento County. Their 2 children were also asleep in their own rooms. Jane Doe number 9 was awakened by a masked man standing in their bedroom holding a gun, shining a flashlight in their eyes. He told her to wake her husband. When she did, the man told them that he would blow their brains out if they moved. The man in the bedroom holding the gun was Joseph DeAngelo. DeAngelo ordered Jane Doe number 8 to roll over and gave her several shoelaces and ordered her to tie her husband's hands behind his back. DeAngelo said, through clenched teeth, "I have a .357 Magnum. You don't tie him up tight, I'm going to blow your fucking head off." During this time, he repeatedly was asking where the money was. He then bound Jane Doe number 9's hands and feet, as well as her husband's feet. DeAngelo rummaged through the house and repeatedly checked on the victims. He asked Jane Doe number 9 where her purse was, and she told him where it was located numerous times. He then placed dishes on John Doe number 8's back and told him, "If I hear the dishes rattle, I'll cut your wife's throat." DeAngelo took Jane Doe number 9 into the living room under the guise of locating her purse. A sweatshirt had been draped over the television, which had been turned on in the living room, creating dim light. After he blindfolded her, DeAngelo touched her neck with a knife and repeatedly threatened her. Joseph DeAngelo unlawfully kidnapped and carried away Jane Doe number 9 with the intent to commit robbery within the meaning of Penal Code Section 209, using both a gun and a knife to do so. His decision to move her away from her husband was more than merely incidental, as it substantially increased the risk of harm to her above and beyond the crime of robbery itself. DeAngelo forced Jane Doe number 8 to orally copulate him, and then he untied her feet and vaginally raped her and sodomized her. 3 rings were taken from her hands, along with a cap and beer.
It was longer on this one. Regarding count 22, do you wish to be heard as the factual basis?
No, Your Honor.
Regarding count 22 in the charge of offense of kidnapping with intent to commit robbery of Jane Doe number 9 having occurred on October 21st, 1977 in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 209, how do you plead?
Guilty.
Also an allegation that you personally used a firearm in the course of that robbery in violation of Penal Code Section 12022.5. Do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
There's also an allegation that you personally used a knife in the course of this robbery in violation of Penal Code Section 12022. Do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe number 9 having occurred on October 21st, 1977 in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of robbery of Jane Doe number 9 and John Doe number 8 having occurred October 21st, 1977 in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 211, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe number 9 and John Doe number 8, having occurred October 21st, 1977, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
And regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe number 9 and John Doe number 8, having occurred October 21st, 1977, in violation, in the County of Sacramento, in violation of Penal Code Section 422, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. As to incident number 28, Jane Doe number 14. On June 18th, 1976, Jane Doe number 14 was sleeping in her bedroom at her Paseo Drive residence in the city of Rancho Cordova, County of Sacramento. She lived with her father, who was retired from the military and on vacation out of state. At approximately 4 a.m., she awoke to a male figure standing in the doorway of her bedroom. The male was wearing a ski mask, a t-shirt, and gloves, but was nude from the waist down and had an erection. The male was Joseph DeAngelo. DeAngelo was armed with a knife He jumped on the bed next to her and held the knife to her right temple. While speaking through clenched teeth, DeAngelo said, "If you move or make one sound, I'll stick this knife in you." DeAngelo told Jane Doe number 14 he was going to rape her, ordered her to take off her nightgown. He looked around the room and in the closet before returning to the bed, demanding that she roll onto her stomach. DeAngelo bound her hands tightly behind her back with a small rope. He again looked around the room and found a belt, which he also tied around her hands. He again ordered her to roll over and then vaginally raped her while she lay on the bed with her hands bound behind her back. When he was done, he wiped his penis clean with the bedsheet and asked her if she had any money. Each time DeAngelo spoke, he used a low, guttural whisper through clenched teeth. He told him there was some change in her bedroom and money in her purse. Before leaving the room, DeAngelo tied her feet together with a bra and an electrical cord from her hairdryer and gagged her while placing a slip in her mouth. Once DeAngelo left her room, she could hear him rummaging through the house. Eventually, everything became quiet. She was able to free herself from her bindings, walk to her father's bedroom, and knock the phone onto the floor to get assistance from the operator. DeAngelo fled with $15 and 2 packs of cigarettes.
Counsel, we should be heard as to incident number 28.
No, Your Honor.
Mr. DeAngelo, regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe number 14, having occurred on June 18th, 1976, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe number 14, having occurred on June 18th, 1976, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe number 14, having occurred June 18th, 1976, in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 422, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Thank you, counsel.
Thank you. In regards to incident 29 and 30, during the early hours of July 17th, 1976, 2 teenage sisters, Jane Doe number 15 and Jane Doe number 16, were home alone at their residence on Marlboro Way in the city of Carmichael, County of Sacramento. Their parents were out of town for several days. The sisters were asleep in separate bedrooms when Jane Doe number 15 was awakened by a male straddling her back. The male was Joseph DeAngelo. He told her, "You make a move, I'm going to stab this right through your neck." He then felt a poke to the back of her neck several times with what she believed was a knife. DeAngelo then struck her several times on the head before grabbing her arms and pulling them behind her back, binding her hands and legs with string, and gagging her with a pair of stockings. She was able to see the suspect had a knit mask covering his entire head. Before leaving the room, DeAngelo said, "Don't you move, or I'll kill you. I'm going to steal some stuff, and I'll be gone in half an hour." DeAngelo then went into the bedroom of Jane Doe number 16. Once in the room, DeAngelo placed his hand over her mouth. She screamed, and he said, "Shut up. I have a knife, and if you don't shut up, I'll kill you." He attempted to restrain her, but she ran out of the room. He caught up to her and hit her in the back of the head, and she fell. Jane Doe number 16 pretended to be unconscious while DeAngelo bound her hands behind her back, bound her legs, gagged her with a sock, and dragged her back to her bedroom. He then left her in the room and could be heard rummaging throughout the house, but eventually returned to Jane Doe number 16, unbound her legs, straddled her back, and forced her to use her hands to masturbate him. He had placed some type of lotion on his penis prior to that time. DeAngelo then came close to her ear and asked, "Have you ever fucked before?" She shook her head. "No." DeAngelo then repeatedly vaginally raped her. In between the rapes, he would rummage through the house and then return only to rape her again. When he was finished, DeAngelo asked her where the money was in the house. Eventually, the house was quiet. She was able to loosen her bindings and call for assistance. DeAngelo took money and an opal ring from the resident.
Thank you. Counsel wish to be heard as to incident 30.
No, Your Honor.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe 16 having occurred on July 17th, 1976 in the county of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe 15 and Jane Doe 16 having occurred on July 17th, 1976 in the county of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe 15 and Jane Doe 16 having occurred July 17th, 1976 in the county of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 422, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Thank you, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. In regards to incidents 31 through 33, Jane Doe number 17 lived with her husband and their two daughters, Jane Doe 18 and 19, at their residence on Malaga Way in the city of Rancho Cordova in the county of Sacramento. Her husband worked the night shift and was away from home most nights. On August 29, 1976, 3 o'clock in the morning, Jane Doe number 17 and her two daughters were asleep when Jane Doe number 18 was awoken by the sound of chimes that were hung near her bedroom window. It was a warm evening, and many of their windows had been left open. When Jane Doe number 18 looked toward the window, she saw a silhouette of a male trying to pry her window screen off. When she sat up, the male ducked down. Jane Doe number 18 ran to her mother's room and told her someone is trying to break into the house. The two of them went to her sister's room to wake her, but were unable to do so. They looked in the backyard and then quickly went to the kitchen to use the phone. As the mother was dialing the phone, they could hear the curtain rod crash to the floor. Shortly thereafter, they saw a male standing directly in front of them. The man was Joseph DeAngelo. The first words he uttered were, "Freeze, or I'll kill you all," and told her to hang up the phone. He was holding a gun in one hand and a club in the other hand and was naked from the waist down. As DeAngelo drew closer to them, Jane Doe number 17 grabbed him by the wrist to turn the gun away from her family. His response was to strike her in the head several times with the club he was holding. After beating her into submission, he told them all he wanted was their money. When he asked if there was anyone else in the house, Jane Doe number 18 said that her sister was asleep in her own bedroom. He then tried to tie the mom, Jane Doe number 17's hands behind her back, but she struggled with him. DeAngelo struck her several more times in the head with the club. She was able to break free and ran out the front door to a neighbor's house. DeAngelo in turn fled the residence. Jane Doe number 17's head injuries required multiple stitches. Their residence was located just around the corner from Jane Doe number 14, who was sexually assaulted 2 months prior.
Counsel, you wish to be heard as to the factual basis of incident 31, 32, and 33?
Your Honor.
Regarding the uncharged offense of burglary in the first degree of Jane Doe 17, Jane Doe 18, and Jane Doe 19 having occurred on August 29, 1976 in the county of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 459, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of attempted rape of Jane Doe 17, Jane Doe 18, and Jane Doe 19 having occurred on August 29, 1976 in the county of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 664/261, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Thank you, counsel.
In regards to incidents 34 and 35, on the morning of October 5th, 1976, Jane Doe number 20's husband left for work. Her 3-year-old son, John Doe number 13, came into her room and got into bed with her. Her husband had been gone only 10 minutes when she heard a light switch off and footsteps in the hallway of her home, located on Wood Park Way in the city of Citrus Heights in the county of Sacramento. When she looked up toward the bedroom door, she saw a masked male standing in the doorway. The masked male was Joseph DeAngelo. DeAngelo told her, "Shut up. I want your money and I won't hurt you." Jane Doe number 20 hugged her son tightly and said, "Please don't hurt us." "Take my money. Just leave us alone." DeAngelo told her he had a knife. When she continued to beg DeAngelo to take all their money and go, he responded by again telling her to shut up. He would use the knife on her. DeAngelo tied her hands behind her back with shoestrings, bound her ankles, and blindfolded her with a towel. He confirmed the fact that he did have a knife by sticking it on different parts of her body, including her neck. After tying her up, he began rummaging through the drawers and other rooms of the house. When the suspect returned to the bedroom, Jane Doe number 20 could hear fabric being ripped. DeAngelo used that torn fabric to bind the hands and feet of the little boy. He then moved Jane Doe number 20's son off the bed, away from her. When she continued to beg for their safety, DeAngelo stuffed a washcloth in her mouth. He approached the side of the bed and told her, "Play with my penis," with her hands. DeAngelo untied her legs and used his fingers to digitally penetrate her vagina. He then vaginally raped her. During the rape, DeAngelo asked her if it felt like the captain's and that she looked good at the club. Jane Doe number 20's husband was a captain in the military and was assigned to a nearby base. After the sexual assault, she could hear DeAngelo walking around the house. When she could no longer hear him in the house, she was able to remove the blindfold and hop, still bound, to a neighbor's house for help. When asked to describe her assailant to law enforcement, Jane Doe number 20 reported that he had a small penis, a fact that was consistently reported by the majority of the sexual assault victims.
Thank you. Counsel, you wish to be heard as the factual basis? You wish to be heard?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Regarding the uncharged offense of rape, Jane Doe 20, having occurred on October 5th, 1976, in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe 20 and John Doe 13, age 3, on October 5th, 1976, in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat to Jane Doe number 20 and John Doe number 13, having occurred on October 5th, 1976, in the County of Sacramento, a violation of Penal Code Section 422, do you admit or deny?
I admit.
Thank you, counsel.
Honor, in regards to Incident 36, on October 9th, 1976, Jane Doe number 21 was asleep in her bedroom on El Segundo Drive in Rancho Cordova in the County of Sacramento when she was awakened by a masked male. He put his hand over his mouth and poked her in the back with a sharp object. The man called her by name, told her not to scream or he would cut her. The man was Joseph DeAngelo. DeAngelo had Jane Doe number 21 turn over, tied her hands behind her back, gagged her, and blindfolded her. He led her back to the patio outside where he had her lie down on a rug. DeAngelo then tied a clothesline from Jane Doe number 21's brother's bedroom door to a bathroom faucet in order to prevent him from opening his door. DeAngelo questioned her about where he could find money. He went back inside and she could hear him walking around the house and then in the backyard. When he approached her, it sounded as if he were masturbating. He told her, "Don't you dare scream," and again poked her with a knife. DeAngelo then said, "You'd better let me do this," before straddling her back, putting his penis in her hands, and forcing her to masturbate him. DeAngelo then vaginally raped her several times, forcing her to change positions multiple times at his direction. After the sexual assaults, he dragged her close to one of the patio posts and tied her feet to the post. He removed 2 rings from her fingers and told her not to scream as he lived close by. Once she determined he was gone, she loosened her blindfold and hopped into the house. She was unable to call law enforcement. The phone lines had been cut. Jane Doe 21's residence had been burglarized in September of 1973, with the burglar taking a single earring and some other jewelry.
Thank you, counsel. We wish to be heard as to incident number 36.
No, Your Honor.
Regarding the uncharged offense of rape of Jane Doe 21 having occurred on October 9, 1976 in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 261, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
Regarding the uncharged offense of false imprisonment of Jane Doe number 21 having occurred on October 9, 1976 in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 236, do you admit or deny that?
I admit.
And regarding the uncharged offense of making a criminal threat, Jane Doe number 21 having occurred on October 9,